Hello, this is Chris Goldthorpe with ChrisChess.com, and this video is going to be in the beginner series on the Giucco Piano, and it's meant to be a short video for people who are very much beginners, possibly for an after-school enrichment class at a school. So let's take a look. And we're going to go to leechess.org, which is a great free resource. And we're going to pull up the chessboard when it comes up by going to Tools, Analysis. And we're going to show this from the white side. However, if you have students playing each other, trying out this opening, we're certainly going to give some ideas for playing the black pieces as well. So, leechess.org, not .com, it's lichess.org. And we're going to see Tools here, and then Analysis Board. This will bring up a chessboard for us. So this is a database of games by strong players. And E4, E5, so-called open games, are very popular with beginners. So I'm going to explain a lot of those first. Hopefully you've already seen the video on the Four Knights game. So now again, let's talk about open game E4, E5. And in both cases there were other good moves, but this is what we're studying for now. Now, in the beginning of the game, there's three important goals, objectives. Control the center, that's these four squares in the middle, D4, E4, D5, and E5, and the squares right next to them to a lesser extent. We want to control the center, develop our pieces, that is, bring your pieces off the back row. You'd like to move each piece one time only to a square where it helps to control central squares and where it cannot easily be dislodged, that is, threatened and so forced to move. So minor pieces first. Minor pieces are knights and bishops. You'd like to get everything out from in between the rooks. When you castle, the king is no longer between the rooks. So we want to control the center, develop our pieces, and castle. So there are other good moves here. You can play the Vienna game, you can play the bishop's opening, but the Giucco Piano starts with this move. And black could play various obscure openings like the Latvian gambit, the elephant gambit. You don't need to remember the names of those right now. You'll hear them again when we talk about them. This is the Petrov, or the Russian defense. But this leads to a number of different openings. White could now play, most popular among strong players is the Ruy Lopez, which we'll talk about at some point. And the Italian game is the second most common. Now, there are other reasonably good openings, especially at lower levels. There's the Scotch game, and like we covered in a previous video, the Four Knights. But this video is going to focus on this move. And black has three common replies here. Only two of them are good, and there are three good replies. So, this is a trap that people try to play. And rather than to go into the details of this trap, all you need to know about this move is you just trade knights. And it's not a good way for black to play. Would not recommend it at all. Here's another move that black could play that's not good. This move. People play this move to stop the knight from going here. Probably because they used to play the two knights defense, which involves moving the knight here at this point in time. And that's a perfectly good opening. But one of white's choices in that event is to bring his knight here. And that's called the Fagiletto attack. It is not the fried liver attack until and unless we have this trade of pawns, which you'll see later on in another video, and then the knight captures at f7. That is the fried liver. So they call this the anti-fried liver, but it is a mistaken move. If the intent is to stop a knight or bishop from going here, then bishop to e7, which is called the Hungarian defense, achieves that and gets black closer to castling because it develops a piece. So that bishop e7 is clearly superior to this non-developing h6 beginner move. So now knight f6 is the two knights defense, and we'll talk about that in a later video, but we're not discussing that right now. So the main move we're discussing right now is bishop to c5, and this is now called the Giucco Piano, which is not really well named because in Italian Giucco Piano means quiet game, and it's not a quiet game, in part because these two king's pawns are out here in the middle, immobile but effective. And that means we're going to have an open center with lots of bishop moves and queens coming out and a lot of pieces activated at the same time, which makes it complicated and tactical. So this is the Giucco Piano, this position. So if you want your class to learn about the Giucco Piano, you have both black and white make these first three moves. So I'm going to go back and do those moves again. And now bishop c4, and no, not that, bishop c5. There. So this is here, bishop c4, bishop c5. You can mandate that these first three moves be made by both sides. After that, you can allow them to play any move that they want to. I'm not going to recommend that students take on studying the Evans Gambit as beginners. That's a later video. Also, this Italian Gambit, I don't recommend that either. Black should take with the bishop the so-called Miami variation. But among moves that white could make here that are worth thinking about, we have c3, castles, or d3. And this one is very good in scholastic chess. Now, very strong players make this move as well. And now black would normally go here. Notice black temporarily has more pieces out than white does. But if white plays this d4 move, black will at that point not be free to just develop a piece or even prepare to, because his bishop and his pawn will be under attack. Now, the number one move among very strong players is to delay this issue in the center and play d3. But if you are the black pieces, and let's just go a few more moves with that. Black goes d6, and since white's not going to really be trying to get his knight here with a pin on this knight, you know, with the bishop going here first, this is a plan that is often effective, where you bring the bishop here, pinning the knight to the queen, and then you bring this knight to here. And if he's castled, you trade knights, and then that opens the king side and makes the king easier to attack. But with this pawn here, although white cannot easily do that plan himself, He also stops black from doing a similar plan because the knight can't move here. So white typically is free to castle here. And then the purpose of this move is so that the bishop can go all the way back without being bothered again and again. And if need be, he can chase this bishop. Okay, and then white will often go here to prevent b5. And he doesn't need to worry about a knight or a bishop going here. So you don't really need to memorize all that if you just sort of see this position. More experienced players who have some familiarity with the Ruy Lopez may know this more subdued variation with d3. But as far as what to remember, if you're the black pieces, when white makes that d3 move, you can play d6 and you just castle soon. So now the idea is not to memorize a million variations, but to be familiar with the general ideas. The whole idea of this move is to play d4, or at least to be prepared to and to control these squares. So this is a more aggressive variation. Now, black pretty much has to take because the bishop is under attack and this is double attacked. So he could take here, and there's some very wild variations involving taking here. If you have time, I would recommend that you look at a game. You might want to write this down. Steinitz versus von Bartheleben. It's an old game. It's from 1896, where white does the gambit variation. Now I show this only for the white pieces. I mean, I would consider this to be the main move for white. However, this is not a bad move. And from here, black checks. And that should give him full equality if they play properly. Now, in games between beginners, that means very little because a lot of games they have one player winning very much and then the other player ends up winning. White could go here and then he can take this pawn, and if you want to pause the video here, you can see how white wins his pawn back. It has to do with f7 and the queen going here. So here's the answer. You can take here, and when he takes back, here's check. King's got to take back, and then the queen goes here with check. And then you're going to pick up the knight on the next move. So it's not really so good for white because remember, he's only getting his pawn back. And he's got an isolated pawn. But this king is not in big trouble because white doesn't have a whole bunch of pieces developed to try to attack. So this is, as you can see by the engine, this says slightly better for black, but in practice it's about equal. Between against the exposed king means a little bit more. Okay, so that's how you get the pawn back. Now there's a tactical variation where white can go here, and then if white takes here, we have this gambit, and then we can get to this position. There's a move here, but this is also a move here, and he goes back here. Okay. Now, since this is a video, you can replay this as many times as you like. So I'm going to show you what should be considered the main line here. And then he comes up and attacks the bishop. And then the bishop goes here and pins it. Black saves his knight. You go here. Actually, this check is not best. This best. You may want to look up a check between Hikaru Nakamura and Liang Wonder. And that went from here. Okay, a quick review. Giucco Piano starts with e4, e5, so-called open game. Both players should want to control the center, develop their pieces, and make their king safe. So white develops with a threat, black develops and guards. White puts pressure on the vulnerable because only the king guards at f7 square, and then black does something analogous to that with this move. And c3 is a move here, castles is a move here, knight c3 is also okay. d4 is a move. This is a move that's been played by good players, but for the purpose of this video we focused on this. And black got his knight out, and then we go here. Now d3 is what very strong players play against each other, but these are certainly very strong players here. White played this against black. Takes, and besides e5 there's the c takes d4. And so white could go here, but this is the other move. Okay, so if you want to play the Giucco Piano, start with these three moves by both sides. And I appreciate your liking this video, and you can subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. And this is Chris Goldthorpe from ChrisChess.com.